Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Terry Martin with the Illinois Channel, and I'm joined once again with Jeff Berkowitz in Chicago. Jeff and I have been both busy covering some of the election news, so we haven't come to you recently. But, Jeff, we're going to be talking about the results of the primary yesterday as we taped this, March 17th primary, and a number of surprises. What, off the top of your head, Jeff, was the big story of the Illinois primary?
Well, Pritzker won 3 and the Republicans lost everything. Here you go. He's bought himself, 8 years ago, he bought himself the governorship, the primary and the general. He bought himself re-election. And then yesterday he made sure he'd win re-election because his candidate, he's got his own candidate. Some people pick voters. J.B. Pritzker picks opponents. He picked Darren Bailey as the opponent he wanted last time. He got him and he beat his ass. And he's going to do it again because he got Bailey again, okay? And he picked a comptroller. There were 4 running in the Democratic primary. He picked his comptroller. She won. He runs the.
And who was the comptroller he picked?
Doesn't matter, you know. Brock, something like that. I can't Croc. You know, she was a former state rep. He's got a chessboard. He picks up a former state rep. You can buy.
It is true that, I mean, with his money. Not only that he's governor, more importantly with his money, whatever the governor wants, the governor's going to get, certainly within the Democratic Party. And we see that throughout the runs here. So the big news is, in the governor's race, it's going to be what it was 4 years ago, Governor Pritzker versus Darren Bailey. Darren Bailey lost big time to the Governor Pritzker 4 years ago, and I don't frankly see how Darren Bailey has much of a chance to win this time, unless he has some scandal that comes out, unforeseen, that would just so, upset the race. If everything is as it is now, I would predict that Governor Pritzker would be reelected to a 3rd term, and he will have a new lieutenant governor because Kristen Mitchell, because his current lieutenant governor, Juliana Stratton, yesterday won the primary to be the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate.
But I have the secret weapon. I've got footage on Kristen Mitchell. And does he? I guess he might have it too.
Tell us your secret. What do you think? Did you interview him or what?
Yeah, I interviewed him a long time ago. I do have footage. It could be challenging, but not that terrible, so I'm half kidding. Because, as you know, we have something interesting to show the voters when Pritzker came out with his first ad this morning, right?
We'll show that in a bit. I don't want to necessarily start off with that.
Well, just to tease our viewers, Berkowitz has a cameo in that 1-minute ad for Pritzker. He didn't even ask. He didn't even say, "Hey Jeff, can I use your?"
Yeah, it happens. It happens that these campaigns go out and pull video. But let's take a look real quick at the vote total here, where we have Darren Bailey with virtually 300,000 votes, handily beating Ted Dabrowski, that both you and I know and like. Ted's a good guy. He worked with wire points, and you see James Mendrick. Also, I don't have anything against any of these people, but what we do see here is that Darren Bailey, with his name recognition from 4 years ago, even if Mendrick and Heidner would have given their votes to Ted Dabrowski, Ted still would have not had enough votes, as we look at these, to have defeated Darren Bailey. Or do you think Ted Dabrowski, could have defeated Bailey?
Right. I mean, if you add those two, it's not enough for Ted to win, but it's within the margin of error almost. So he could have gone to people if he had a poll showing that, assuming the poll was inaccurate of this, and it showed him to be losing, let's just say, 52 to 48, which would have been close to, as opposed to 52 to whatever.
53 to let's call it 53 to 30. But you're right. It would have been about 52 to 48 if Ted had those other votes.
Right, and that's within the margin of error. And then they would say, "Hey, Ted, you need $1 million. Here it is." But going to him and
You
saying,
mean
hey,
prior to the election? If Ted
Right.
could have said, "Hey, look, I'm within striking distance," and he goes out to whatever daddy warbucks he can find to give him $1 million or $2 million, and then maybe
He
Ted with
could have
commercials could have, made that up.
I can tell you, I'm close to folks. I can tell you, he could have done it in a heartbeat, in a New York City heartbeat. It would have been so easy. Million, you need two? Here's two, Ted. Okay? You're 4 points away from changing the state. We're putting you there. Okay? But he didn't have that poll, pretty sure, because his campaign, I can put it this way. His campaign, my understanding, talking to a few people.
Let's not say he Dabrowski? Okay.
Ted Dabrowski's campaign, talking to a few people in that campaign, you could say that campaign was putting out some numbers like they're within striking distance, and they would define that as 7 to 8 points. Pat Brady. So I'm often beating up on Pat Brady, the former GOP chair. I'll give Pat one. He was on TV. Okay, there we go. So Pat Brady was putting out the numbers, or people like him, sort of faux Republicans. Pat was chairman of the Illinois GOP. I could explain it, but really most Republicans would say he's not a Republican now. But WGN hasn't gotten the memo. So Pat Brady was on WGN last night, and he sort of implied, but he could have said, "Hey, I predicted this. I predicted a 25-point spread," and he would have been right. I think Pat had that. He nailed it. Okay, and so Pat, don't give me credit for anything. But my point is, Ted Dabrowski had the ability, and you and I know this because we both interviewed him numerous times. He had the ability to beat Darren Bailey if it was a fair and square, what I'll call fair and square election. He would have the ability to get the nomination, and then he had a good shot, I'll put it that way, a really good shot at beating, would have been an upset, at beating J.B. Pritzker. And that would have been a hell of an upshot for a guy who's almost surely running for president and stopping him from getting the third election. His re-election needed for winning. So Ted could have done that.
All right, let me interject. You're going a little long here. I want to show a commercial, and it's interesting for a couple reasons. I want to show a commercial that Governor Pritzker put out today, March 18. Now, when you put out a commercial against Darren Bailey the day after the election, of the primary election, it goes to show, number one, that Pritzker was counting all along that Darren Bailey was going to be the Republican nominee. I will also point out, as Jeff mentioned, this is a commercial of a series of clips of Darren Bailey speaking. They're using his own words against him. And as you'll see, Jeff, is one of the clips they pulled, the Pritzker people pulled for this commercial, was from an interview Jeff did 4 years ago with Darren Bailey when he was running. But let's take a look of the commercial.
You remember Darren Bailey.
Once Roe versus Wade is overturned and once abortion is made illegal, then we have to turn around. That's not where it stops.
I voted no on Senate Bill 1 today, the bill that's going to raise Illinois minimum wage to $15 an hour.
If somebody were raped or there was a matter of incest in the family, would you allow that woman to have an abortion?
Right now, my answer is no.
Now he's back and running for governor again, sharing more of his extreme views.
President Trump, I do believe in his tariffs.
When these people are railing against President Trump because these tariffs have destroyed agriculture, no, I'm not buying that a bit.
Do you think it'll be time to send the National Guard into Chicago to fix that crime?
President Trump is a smart man. He knows what he does and when he does it. By the end of the first quarter and into the second quarter, his policies are going to begin to show fruit. He is a man of integrity.
Darren Bailey's back, and he's still too extreme for Illinois.
So, Jeff, we're told by the Pritzker people that Darren Bailey is too extreme for Illinois. If you were giving advice to Darren Bailey and telling him how he could win this election, tell us what you would tell him.
Well, they usually say in politics it should just be 2 or 3 things. I would say there are 5 things to run on. Sometimes just mention 3, then 2, 2 or 3. And make sure Aaron Delmar does the same thing. And anybody who's talking for you says the same thing. It's a theme election. Governor J.B., and it's stolen from Ted Dabrowski, but don't worry, he'll let you do it. Just say J.B. Pritzker has failed over the last 8 years. He came in with schools not performing around the state. It leaves with them worse. He came in with taxes being high. They're even higher, especially property taxes, sales taxes, income taxes, right? Especially property taxes. He came in with crime okay, actually. We weren't talking so much about crime in 2018. He made it much worse. He made it much worse. He came in with illegal immigration, not quite the issue yet that it would become, and he made it much worse. He came in with not a good record on Illinois being the center of job creation. He made it so much worse, I can't even describe it. 5 big things on which Pritzker has failed the people around the state of Illinois. Learn this, say it well, study it. Don't just remember 5 words. Show some verbal dexterity, Darren. You said yourself, when you started the new Darren Bailey 3 or 4 months ago in an interview with Marianne Ahern after the sad death, the tragic death of 4 members of your family, which we've all said our sympathy for. After that, you said, one of the things you've learned now is words matter. Well, listen to Berkowitz. It's free advice. Words matter. Follow those words. Make sure Aaron Delmar follows it. Everybody on the campaign does it for 8 months. Pound, pound, pound. That's it.
And
you win.
Well, and that's what they got to do. They got to. You can't be all over the table. You got to be able to hone your attack and then pound it. The governor has some areas where he can be attacked. He's going to say how bad it was when he came in economically under Bruce Rauner, and that he's had, I think it was 6 credit upgrades to the state. That's all well and good, but let's not forget Illinois got billions of dollars in COVID money during his time in office, and he has increased spending in the state, the governor, by 60%. Instead of saying we need to get the ship back on track and hold, as Governor Edgar did when he came in. He was nicknamed by Mike Madigan. Edgar was, as governor, no, because he said no to everything in his first term. Pritzker could have done some of that. Instead, he's been spending wildly. Every year he comes in with another big increase. I think this was one of his lowest increases that he just came in with an increase of approximately $800 million over the previous year's budget. But there are areas, and the crime, as you mentioned, I think is one. The thing I would say, too, is did the Republicans, did they pick the right guy? When we look back at the overall total, and as you see here again, Bailey with 300,000 total from around the state, with Ted with getting just a little over half of those votes. But when you look at the counties, you see that we have Ted Dabrowski beating Bailey in Cook County, and this is where the population is, and then 48 to 31. When you look at DuPage County next door, Ted again wins 37 to 26%. So in the Chicagoland area, Ted did well, but when we look at downstate, when we look at Sangamon County, where Springfield is, this is where Bailey won around the state in these other counties outside of Chicagoland, and he won overwhelmingly. They are lower voting counties, but look at the margins, 60% to 25%. In Adams County, over by the Mississippi River, Bailey 71% to 18.5%. And this is what I think, killed Ted Dabrowski as far as winning the nomination. But I question, now that we're going to the general, and Chicagoland just doesn't seem to take to Darren Bailey very much, I don't know how Bailey can overcome all those Democrat votes coming out of Chicago and the collar counties.
Well, here's one thing that Ted's very proud of, and I don't know if he said it publicly, but even if it's not public, I can certainly report on it. He has said wherever he could speak to a group, and then test it in one form or another, polling or otherwise, downstate, wherever he spoke to that group, if you could poll them and ask them and talk to them after, he had won the majority of those people, if not all of them, over Bailey. So his point was, wherever he could show the people downstate who had voted for Bailey before, that this time there's an option, and that's Ted Dabrowski, and they hear him, and they learn about him, and they know his views and his issues, they're going with Ted. Really. That's polling, that's talking, but he couldn't, here's the point. He really didn't have enough time. He should have started earlier than 6 months. Officially, he started 6 months ago, really got going with about 2 or 3 months after January 1, okay? Not enough time.
Well, the
to
other
reach
thing is,
people.
to my knowledge,
Hold on,
Ted never
let me
ran
just
before.
finish.
He was a freshman, I mean, where Bailey had run. But go ahead,
Well,
what?
the point is, 2 or 3 months and $1.8 million is what he raised and he's had at that time, not enough. You need more than 6 months. You need 8, 10 months. Look, Barack Obama lost a race. People don't realize. He lost one race. in his
Congressional
life.
race.
Right.
to Bobby
You know,
Rush.
Bobby Rush. And what I've said about that, I said, it turns out in Illinois, at least, or in the country, in the United States, it's tougher for a Democrat to win and beat Bobby Rush in the first congressional district Democratic primary than it is to become president of the United States. Obama could have run that race 100 times and he was going to lose it 100 times. Okay. And you know what he said to me when I asked him? Because I did these 6 shows with him. And one time I asked him, well, what did you learn from losing that to Bobby Rush? 2 things. He told me this like in 2001, 2002, before he started running for U.S. Senate. If I'm going to run again, I'm going to start early. The most important thing to learn in politics, start early, he said. Second thing, get the money up front. Don't get pledges, I'll support you. Start seeing the money. As the famous movie says, show me the money.
Yeah.
Show
All
me
right.
the money.
Well, listen,
He
we spent
didn't,
half the
so-
show now on this. If I had to pick the ghost of future, a Christmas future, I would say Pritzker is going to coast to re-election unless Bailey comes up with some hardcore way to attack and dent Pritzker's armor. I don't see that happening. So
Wait a second, hold, Ted, sorry, Terry, sorry. We just gave him the answer. What do you mean if? If he does
well,
those
you
five
might
things,
you give
if he
people an
pushes-
answer. You can give your teenage kids an answer. They don't necessarily follow the advice.
Well,
I mean,
that's what I'm saying. If he follows that advice, if he does, if Aaron Delmar was with him, if his whole team is with him,
you got to find the
doesn't he
pressure
win?
points.
That's not advice to say he's failed on 5. Pritzker has failed on 5 major issues, and here's the data, and here's the evidence. Why doesn't that win, Terry? Why doesn't that win?
Because I think people don't listen to Jeff Berkowitz, maybe when they should, but they don't. And I just say, Darren, if you're going to have a campaign that makes it worth your while for all the work, I'll give him this. No, as I said 4 years ago, no one works harder than Darren Bailey. He's a farmer. He works hard. But you got to have a better message because you know what happened last time, and that didn't work. So you got to be doing something different this time because it's the same voters you're facing against with the same opponent. Let's move along to the other big race that happened, and it is the Senate race, and here are the results. Juliana Stratton taking the vote, 39, gotten 400,000 votes. In the Republican side, down on the lower part there, Don Tracy, who's from Springfield, won with 158,000 votes. So, while Don Tracy won, let's notice that his winning total vote count is 158,000, in which he wouldn't even have come in third. He would have come in third place if he was running against Stratton and Raja Krishnamurthy. So it's a dubious victory for Don Tracy.
No. We just told Darren Bailey how he can win. Thank you.
All right, you might want to sit up a little bit if I want to pop in a graphic here.
Yeah, how much time do we have left? I don't want to use all.
We are at 20 minutes in.
Okay. So remind me, I got to tell you something about comptroller. We'll come back to that. But right now, the trick is, what do we tell Don Tracy, who also hasn't asked us? What does he have to do to win the race? because it is winnable. It is winnable. Okay? I mean, Stratton only got 40%. She enters this race with 40% of the vote, not like she's got 100%. And that's 40% of basically 15% of the Democratic Party who vote in the primary. So there are a lot of Democrats yet to sign up. So what Bailey has to do is sign up all the Republicans. He's got to sign up most of the independents and win a good smattering of Democrats. That is all doable if he will focus on the issues. They ran, Terry, all three candidates, sadly, Raja, Kelly, and Juliana, ran on one thing. They knew how. They were the toughest candidate on Trump. They knew how to beat Trump. I had to suffer through all these ads, all these nonsensical things that ignored the issues. I wanted to hear about the national issues. What would they do about Iran? Just be specific.
Well, that's what I find is the weak part of the Democratic candidate. It's not just in Illinois, but across the nation. What's your policy position? You can't just be telling America orange man bad. Maybe that helps with the Democratic voters, but if you win, what are you going to do? What are you going to do to make the economy better, America stronger in any number of ways? What are you going to do to help education when you got CPS? What is it, only 10% or so can read and do math at grade level? I mean, we're failing a whole generation of American children because the schools are failing.
Yeah, we don't have to repeat it. So one thing we'd say, watch this show, Don, and just do the 5 things Berkowitz told Darren to do. You do that too. Even though some of those are not so-called national issues, just do it anyway. You got a bully pulpit, so cover those 5 issues and talk about the key foreign policy and domestic policy and cultural issues. Make it an issue-oriented campaign. Put some money behind it.
All right.
It's got to be more
What
than
advice
$2 million.
would you give to the 2 candidates running for the U.S. Senate? Juliana Stratton, the current lieutenant governor, and Don Tracy, who's a lawyer out of Springfield.
Well, maybe you weren't listening. I just gave Tracy what to do. So you got a lot to do there, pushing buttons, I understand. So, but the viewers, I hope, heard me say what Tracy should do. So I'll tell you on the side. But what Juliana Stratton should do is anticipate this and watch what Berkowitz just told Tracy to do and offset it. That was the primary. She did that. She won the primary. Now is the time for the people who have some doubts. Because you know what, Juliana? I'm not like a bad guy. I'm trying to give you some good
Well,
advice.
do it quick.
The advice is simply this. You weren't so well known for doing much during the Pritzker administration. Terry and I watched. We didn't see you articulating policy. And if you weren't articulating foreign policy or domestic policy. That's not what a lieutenant governor does. Start now. You can make that up, and you could be preventative and don't even give Tracy a chance to win this. See,
If I was talking to Don Tracy, I would say she spent 8 years as lieutenant governor, and nobody can say one thing of what she has done. I would call her Pritzker's puppet. And you gotta hit people very simply. They're not policy wonks like you and I tend to be. And I would tell Don, personality is not your strong suit. You're a nice guy. But when you get out on the stump, you have to project some personality. You have to be more engaging. You're not a lawyer doing research in your office. And so that's 2 things. To Juliana Stratton, I would say she has personality. I mean, on a personal level, she's a nice woman. She should show that. And she has to come up with some actual policy positions that are going to be hers. I understand you've been in the shadow of J.B. Pritzker as a lieutenant governor, but you have to come up with some compelling answers to the nation's problems. So that's it. Before we run out of time, we're at 24 minutes in. I want to move on to some of these other races.
Let me just make a notation, a correction of myself. Okay?
Go.
So when you asked about comptroller, the lady's name who won the primary, the state rep's name, so I'm not sexist, Margaret Croke, I'm pretty sure.
I think that's it, yeah.
State rep. She's an okay person. I don't think the comptroller is the most important position in the world or the country.
Most people,
or state.
frankly, don't care about comptroller and treasurer. In fact, the Republicans, Jeff, didn't run a candidate for state treasurer to run against Mike Frerichs, but apparently Max Solomon, who ran his own campaign, it's unconfirmed, but Max Solomon maybe the Republican nominee because of a write-in votes. You got to get 5,000.
Here's a secret that you may not know that I know. The Republicans do have a statewide candidate for comptroller who won his race because he was unopposed. So I can say, and I've already interviewed him. We didn't get to use that interview. His name is Bryan Drew. Bryan Drew. Bryan Drew.
Well, I didn't have Bryan Drew's name when I was voting for treasurer.
No, for comptroller. Terry.
I'm talking state treasurer.
I know we're past that. We're past that. Put that, Terry. Get with the flow.
No, I think it's you're the one. I had moved on to state treasurer's race. All right. Let's move along here. I want to, Jeff, we're going to run out of time. I want to mention, look, in some of the congressional races, we've got LaShawn Ford, state representative in the 7th district, wins a Democratic nominee, tantamount to election. Dan Biss in the 9th district, up in your neck of the woods, mayor of, former state senator, mayor of Evansville, and he wins a very crowded, Evanston, I'm sorry.
Evansville's Indiana.
Evanston, and he wins a very crowded race there. So also Jesse Jackson Jr., just having lost his dad, ran for Congress as a comeback candidate in the 2nd. He didn't make it. Donna Miller, who I'm unfamiliar with, but Jackson lost the nomination. And another name that we used to know in the 8th Congressional District, Melissa Bean, former Congresswoman, she won the nomination in a comeback. So interesting races there. We are.
So maybe the Republican wants to know this, because there's a Republican named Jen Davis, and she surprised me and others by beating Mark Rice in a contested primary, 51% to 40%. Okay, but Jen, if you want to know, Berkowitz has footage on your opponent in the general election. Yes, Berkowitz has footage of him with everybody, including Melissa Bean. So get in touch. Or Melissa Bean, maybe you want to get in touch first, and we can have a joint review of the footage. Does it relate to your race? Of course it does. Because Berkowitz has footage on everybody. Terry, I got footage on you.
We are out of time, Jeff, I think. I'll give you the last word.
Okay, I just want to make sure we all heard.
So what are your predictions? Are the Republicans going to win any of these major races come November?
Are the Republicans going to win any of the statewide races? Is that what you mean by major? They're not going to win. I can't predict they'll win any congressional races. I can predict if Darren Bailey will do what I suggested, and you, I think, joined in that. He could win for governor. He could be Pritzker. And if Don Tracy would do what you and I suggested he do against Juliana Stratton, he could be the next U.S. Senator from the state of Illinois. You heard that first? Right.
Look, the Republicans, it's a blue state. It's an uphill battle for them. I would agree Don Tracy has a chance. Of course, Darren Bailey has a chance, but it's really an uphill battle for these two candidates.
In 20 seconds, quitters never win, and winners never quit.
All right.
Vince Lombardi.
All right, Jeff, I'm going to wrap it up. Good for us to be back. Folks, give us your comments. Tell us what you think. Maybe we're all wet. But, Jeff, until next time, we'll say goodbye, and we'll see you later.
Come back next week.